Breathe in, breathe out. Time seems to have slowed down. Breathe in, breathe out. Melissa got back on her feet. Standing up, she could taste blood from her lips. Breathe in, breathe out. Melissa continued to repeat this thought over and over. She needed to calm down, get focused, and pull herself together. That said, it's hard to catch your breath when you were just thrown across a grassy plain by a rampaging rock monster. Breathe in. She looked around her surroundings. She noticed that everything melted together. The sky, the ground, the monster. That attack must have left her in a dizzy state. Breathe out. Everything started to clear. She saw the rest of the defenders holding the monster at bay, but many were being tossed around just as she was. She wanted to go running back into the fray, but painfully received a declining answer from all of her bruises, cuts, and burns from scraping across the grassy ground. Her heart was telling her to continue the fight, but the safer action would be to fall back to safety. As Melissa was considering her options, a sudden figure moved swiftly past from behind her left. She quickly saw a cloaked figure riding a steed towards the monster. Is that guy crazy? What kind of idiot would... Time returned to its normal speed when the horrific realization hit her. She recognized that cloak. It was a cloak that he had taken an interest in at the market. No. She immediately started to run towards the galloping steed. Her run was quickly slowed to a jog. She couldn't go very fast with her pain holding her back. No, I have to stop him. She pushed her pain aside and ran once again, struggling to sprint. The horse, far ahead of her, wheeled back and stood on its back legs when it realized what its rider is steering it towards. The cloaked man fell off, failing to keep his balance. Melissa urged her body to run faster. She tripped, fell, but got back up and continued to run just as fast. The cloaked figure was sprinting towards the monster. As much as she wanted to catch up to him, he was just too far away, and she was too hurt, too slow. Her vision started to blur. She couldn't tell if it was her headache or her tears rising from her eyes. No, I have... She tripped, again, over a large stone, hitting the ground and knocking the air out of her lungs. She couldn't get up. She moved her arms to pull herself up, but failed. Her body, fallen. Her head laid on the dirt and grass. Her face, scared and starting to drip in tears. She struggled, but managed to raise herself only by her arms. She looked towards the battle. The cloaked man was gone. She tried scanning the area for him, but her vision was too blurry. Suddenly, a glow came from the monster's direction, followed by the sound of a thunderous explosion. She blinked back and wiped away her tears to see giant stones flying in all directions. A large stone, much bigger than Melissa's own body, slammed down to her right, nearly crushing her. It was a piece of the monster. The monster was defeated. Melissa took a moment to collect herself, got back to her feet, and hurried to where the monster once was. The rest of the defenders started to gather together. Many celebrated their victory. Some were sitting down and taking in the calm after the storm. But Melissa was scared and frantic. She scanned the group of defenders. He isn't here. Melissa feared the worst. She looked around the plains. The monster's stone remains were everywhere. He could be buried under any of this rubble. She swiftly went to one of the piles of stones and shards, shoving the rocks out of the way. Nothing. She went to one pile and did the same. Nothing. Then another, and another. Nothing. Melissa couldn't give up. She didn't want to lose what was most dear to her. She started to run to another pile when a shining glimmer was shown through the grass. She stopped and started to head towards it. She stopped again and kneeled down to observe the object. She would start to cry again if she had any tears left to spare. It was a badge. It was his badge. And the owner is nowhere to be found. Chapter 1. Sudden Beginnings. Toby had just finished an uneventful day at college. He was relieved that nothing major happened in his classes. He had little homework to do over the weekend. Well, little compared to what he usually gets. He starts packing his belongings and waved to his mutuals and classmates as he started to walk home to his apartment at the edge of town. I wonder if she's here today. Toby's life was pretty uneventful as a whole, which he was grateful for and disappointed at the same time. Nothing life-changing or scary ever really happened to him. He doesn't believe he has any special talents, despite his teachers throughout his school life saying otherwise. "I'm just another student," he would say to his teachers and professors. "I'm just better at following directions than most other teenagers." But as cheesy and corny as it sounded, Toby wanted to make an impact on this world, or someone's life. He wanted people to know his name in a good light. But his fellow students only know him because he was always the good and quiet kid. He doesn't really have any friends at college. Acquaintances, sure, but no one he saw as a friend. He realized that probably one of the major reasons he doesn't have any to begin with is that he never really tried to go out of his way to start a friendship with anyone, which was hard to do since he was so focused on schoolwork. About a year ago, a homeless woman was staying in the alleyway between his apartment and the building next to it on its left. When he saw her, she looked rather sad, staring towards the large pond that his apartment was facing. For a homeless person, she had quite a colorful outfit. She wore a white tank top with a single blue line across its middle horizontally, and she had her hair tied back in a ponytail, and, strangely enough, her hair and her torn-up jeans were dyed pink. Toby wanted to take this opportunity to make an impact on this person's life, and maybe even make a friend. He approached her and politely introduced himself and offered her a sandwich. The sandwich was all that he had at the time, but the woman seemed happy to take it. He soon noticed that she was covered with scratches and scabs on her arms and face. Whatever kind of life this poor woman lived through seemed pretty brutal. The next day, Toby would come home from college and would have small talk with her. "So," Toby started over a small picnic meal over sandwiches, "I never got your name." "Melissa," she answered after finishing a bite. "Cool," Toby responded. There was a pause. She didn't seem to be in the mood for talking. Toby considered to just leave it at that and head back to his... "So what's your name?" Melissa asked suddenly. Toby was surprised. He had thought she wasn't in the mood to talk to a stranger. Toby," Toby answered. "Cool," Melissa repeated Toby's previous response and smiled. They would continue to have small conversations every day since. Well, that's not entirely true. One day, Toby found out that Melissa was nowhere to be seen. It was very disappointing for Toby. He just assumed that Melissa had moved on somewhere else. Funnily enough, however, she would return 2 days later with more scratches. He asked her where she went and what happened to her. She responded with, "That's something for me to know and for you to use your imagination for." Toby was confused. "What is that even supposed to mean?" Toby asked. "Nothing now that I think about it," she chuckled to herself. "I just like seeing you worried and confused. It's like you care about me." Toby was even more confused and a bit offended. Didn't he show enough care by chatting with her when no one else would? I do. I know," Melissa interrupted. She had a big smile on her face and started to laugh. "I'm just messing with you. Man, you get so worried so easily, It's hard not to get a good laugh out of it. She smiled. Toby couldn't help but smile as well. It warmed his heart to see that he had at least warmed hers. Fast forward back to today. This was one of those weeks where Melissa was gone for a while. Toby was walking back from college in hopes that she had returned to the usual meeting spot at the pond. Luckily enough, she was there when he arrived. He set his stuff down and sat next to her. She didn't seem to have any scratches or bruises, but she didn't seem to notice him either. "Melissa?" Toby asked, hoping to get her attention. Nothing. She continued to stare at the water. Are you okay?" She pulled something out of her pocket, something he couldn't see due to his angle, and stared at it for a good second. "Yeah," she finally answered. I'm just scared." This wasn't a very reassuring answer. "Well, that doesn't sound like okay to me. How about we sit down and talk about it?" Melissa nodded, put the object she had in her hand back into her pocket, and sat down next to him. "So, what has been on your mind lately?" "To be honest, a lot," Melissa admitted. "Mostly on a huge decision I want to make." She pulled her arms out in front of her to emphasize the huge in that sentence. "A decision you want to make?" Toby noted. "So, no one is asking anything of you? What kind of decision are you wanting to make?" "Oh, the kind that could change someone's life, or end it if it goes horribly wrong." She put a lot of stress into that sentence with a clenched fist. Toby was definitely concerned. "Okay," Toby said, a little nervous. "Well, let's calm down first. So, if you say that this could end someone's life, then why would you even consider making this decision?" Melissa was silent. Melissa paused for a while. "Well, you see, it's like, have you considered joining the military?" Toby raised an eyebrow at the sudden question. A few times, yeah, but I really don't want to have my life in danger all that much, so... Okay, Melissa continued to press the topic. "But let's say you don't have to. There are a bunch of jobs in the military. Let's say you join a part of it where your life is not constantly in danger. Like one of those guys who gives orders while staring at a screen." "I guess that could work." Toby gave it some thought. "But then people's lives would count on how well I do my job. That's too much pressure for me, honestly." Toby then became curious. "Why are you asking me these questions?" Melissa stayed silent. She had an awkward and nervous expression growing on her face. "You know what?" Melissa stood up. "I'll let this decision be up to you now." What?" Toby responded, looking up at her. "If you want to know what kind of decision I want to make, and more importantly, if you want to know the secrets I'm keeping from you, then come to my home tomorrow. I'll wait for you there." She began to walk away. "Wait," Toby called out to her. "Isn't your home just the dirty alleyway next to my apartment?" "It's home to me," Melissa answered back with a shrug as she walked off to her home. Toby started to head back to his own home. He climbed the steps to his apartment room, entered through the door, sat at his desk, and stared at his homework. He has been looking at it for some time now. He probably would have gotten half of it finished, but his mind is circling other thoughts and questions. Melissa seemed unusual today. More than usual. Should I be worried? What was all that talk about the military? Did her decision relate to me? Of course it did. She asked me that question, and she said that her decision was up to me, whether or not I show up at her back alley getaway, home, whatever. Is she secretly a military recruiter? What exactly did she mean by secret? Toby was too confused to do any of his homework and too curious to have a good night's sleep. Toby walked down to the alley, stepping over trash bags. It was noon. He thought this was a good time to show up at Melissa's place. He did quite a bit of his homework in the morning, but he's worried that he messed up on a bunch of it. He couldn't stop thinking if what he was doing was okay or downright dangerous, so he made sure to take his necklace that was usually hanging on his wall and stuffed it into his jacket's pocket as a blessing for good luck that nothing terrible happens. He looked around the alley. There was certainly a lot of trash, a towel which Toby guessed is where Melissa sleeps, and a brick wall continuing forward, with a dead end. Melissa didn't seem to be anywhere here to greet him. Boo! Ah! Toby fell over in shock. Melissa had approached and surprise attacked him from behind and almost gave Toby a heart attack. Toby was so surprised he fell down on his back and onto the concrete. Melissa? What the? Why? Melissa, of course, was laughing from his misfortune. Sorry, couldn't resist. She reached her hand down to lift him up. He reached for her arm, but she swiped it away from him quickly, then let it back down to actually lift him back up. Did you ask me to be here just so you can scare me? Toby asked after getting his bearings. Yep, pretty much, Melissa said plainly. Toby gave her an interrogative look. All right, you caught me, Melissa smiled and shrugged. You're catching on to my antics quickly. Melissa paused and muttered to herself. I'll have to try a new approach. She walked past Toby and looked at the brick wall behind him. So, Toby said, looking at Melissa, what did you bring me here for? To scare you, Melissa said without looking back at him. Toby rolled his eyes. He thought they had already been through this. What did you really bring me here for? Melissa was staying silent again, as if she was hesitating. I don't know, she shrugged again. Why are you here? Toby was getting tired of Melissa's sarcastic responses, but he decided to play along honestly. You got me curious. You said you would share secrets you're apparently keeping from me. Toby noticed she was slightly nodding her head in acknowledgement. If you came here for secrets, Melissa turned around and pulled out something from her pocket. Do you promise to keep them? She presented to him in the palm of her hand a wide, violet, oval-shaped ring. It was made of a metallic material, seemed wide enough to fit 2 or 3 fingers, and a symbol of 3 shapes swirling in a spiral. I guess? Toby said, gazing at her item. I guess, Melissa mocked him. Yes or no? I won't accept anything in between. She clenched her fist around the ring and pulled it back to herself. Yes? Toby hesitated. Yes with a question mark? Yes, Toby said more sternly. I hear stuttering. Yes. Are you this lame and quiet when it comes to an epic secret unveiling? Yes, Toby said with a bit more volume. Come on, you don't even sound all that excited, Melissa continued to tease. Honestly, it was really bugging Toby. Yes! Toby yelled at a loud volume. He surprised himself, causing him to immediately shut his mouth. Melissa bursted into a laughing fit. Your face! It's priceless! Toby was even more embarrassed. Melissa took deep breaths to calm herself. Okay, let's do this. Melissa put the strange ring on 3 of her fingers. She turned to face the brick wall. She took in a breath, performed a punching motion with the arm that had the brace attached, and twisted her wrist. Toby could hardly believe what he witnessed. Very quickly, a wisp of violet flame formed in front of Melissa and grew into a circle. No, a tunnel of violet flames, swirling in a smooth, clockwise motion. Toby was astounded. Melissa looked back at him with a pleased look. Toby tried to form a question. What, But wait! There's more! Melissa interrupted him, then swiftly took his arm and pulled him toward the vortex. Toby panicked and tried to plant his feet to the concrete. It's useless. Melissa's a lot stronger than he thought.
Come on,
Melissa insisted.
I promise, this is completely safe.
What about this is safe? Toby cried. Melissa then quickly switched behind him and shoved him into the fiery vortex. Toby fell face first onto the burning tunnel's surface. He was certain that he was immediately set on fire, but he wasn't. He looked up. There were purple flames surrounding all around the tunnel, yet they didn't burn. They didn't feel like anything. He sat up in amazement. He felt like he was floating among the flames, on a smooth, invisible surface. He tried touching the fire again, tracing his hand from the bottom to the side of the cylinder.
Cool, huh?
Melissa said as she entered the fiery tunnel. She had a smile on her face that was proud yet mischievous.
Let's get to the other end. I need to close this soon.
She walked past Toby, stopped, and looked back, waiting for him to catch up. Toby cautiously stood up and slowly walked over to Melissa.
Don't worry,
Melissa reassured him.
You won't fall, or burn, or die.
What is this? Toby said quietly once he made over to Melissa.
You'll see in just a sec.
Melissa seemed very excited once they made it to the other end. Climbing out of the tunnel, they seemed to have entered a dimly lit room. Melissa closed the portal behind them with the same ring, simply by twisting her wrist again. Toby scanned the room. It wasn't very impressive, but still strange and mysterious. The walls were made of a very dark purple stone, or was it magenta? In the center, there was a pedestal. He walked over to examine it. The pedestal was made of metal, with a keyboard, a screen analyzing some kind of statistic, and a very, very tiny screen on the top right. Where are we? Toby asked Melissa. Melissa was next to a metal door, holding the knob. She beckoned him to come over, and he did.
How about we introduce you to the others before I answer your burning questions?
Melissa said with an excited smile. Others? Hey, Mustard Mustache here, the author, illustrator, and now narrator for the Vortex. Vortex is a very big passion project for me, and I want it to be accessible and experienceable, if that's a word, for as many people as possible. So I knew I couldn't keep it on Twitter, which is how I've been telling my story so far, through PDF files I've been putting out on the Twitter account, which you can find in the description below. You can read the story in the pinned thread of @VortexStories. First thing I want to get off my chest here, I am so sorry about the voice. Maybe it's not a problem for you. Maybe you don't mind the voice. I do. I hate my voice. It's not good for reading books, or I do like voicing characters, but it's not a good voice for voicing. On a microphone, at least. I find that I'm pretty good at voicing outside of a microphone, but, microphones do that to you, and, you hear your voice internally, and you think you're better than you are, but you really aren't. Don't bother me about that. It's not a problem to me. I'm just worried about you guys. I know that if you've been following me on Twitter, that I've been working on this for a long time, to the point where I'm kind of embarrassed about it. The reason why it took so long is because I wanted to narrate this thing to where it sounds right. I wanted to redraw and draw new drawings for this chapter, and I had to edit the whole thing together. And yeah, I'm sorry that this took so long. It's probably not worth the wait, but I do plan to get better at everything about this. My voice, my illustrations. I hope it will get better from here on out. Maybe. If you enjoyed the first chapter here, then thank you thank you for actually sticking through with it. If you want to see more of the story, like I said, it's up on at Vortex Stories on Twitter. But Twitter is such a website that I know that not a lot of people are going to be going onto Twitter just to read a single story. So I really wanted to adapt this into YouTube in some way possible. I don't have the effort and patience to animate this whole thing or make it into a comic, and I don't have the know-how to make a website for it. So I am now making it a dramatic reading on YouTube. Don't worry, I'm still putting up the new chapters on Twitter, but now I'm adapting them onto YouTube whenever I'm not making chapters. So I'm going to be hopping from one to the other. Hopefully, that's the plan. I guess it really depends on whether this whole dramatic reading thing pulls off or not. And if it doesn't, then I guess I'm still doing the dramatic reading thing because I want to do it. It's so weird going back to my first chapter, seeing how bad my writing and my art was from the beginning. It gets better. I swear it gets better. And I still have plenty more planned for the story than I've already put up. Chapter 14. I'll work on that after this is done. Which, if you're hearing this, then yeah, this is done. And I'm working on chapter 14. Hopefully. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say here. I'm sorry that it took so long. I'm sorry if it doesn't meet your expectations. I hope you like the art. And Vortex will continue. Whether you like it or not. Whether I like it or not. It's gonna continue. I just put this little end card back here just to share some feelings, some thoughts, some author's notes stuff, whatever you want to call it. Did I just say Arthur? So, yeah, I'll try to get better at my voice. I'll probably release chapter 2 of Vortex dramatic reading if that ever happens. I don't know. Life is unexpected like that, and I'm going through a lot of life right now. Anyway, I've been talking too long, and I'll just end it off by saying I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you whenever, I guess.